My son wrote, "Don't come for Christmas. My wife's family is real family." I canceled his gift. When I read that text message on my phone, sitting alone in the kitchen where I'd raised that boy, I felt something inside me go very still. Not sadness, not yet. Something colder, something final. Because what my son didn't know was that the Christmas gift I was about to cancel wasn't a sweater or a gift card. It was the deed to a fully paid off vacation property worth $340,000. And that was only the beginning of what he was about to lose. Good day, dear listeners. It's Isabella again. I'm glad you're here with me. Please like this video and listen to my story till the end, and let me know which city you're listening from. That way I can see how far my story has traveled. Today's story is one that still makes my chest tighten when I think about it. It's about a mother's love, a son's betrayal, and the moment a quiet woman decided she was done being quiet. My name is Margaret Ellen Caldwell. I'm 72 years old, and I live in a pale blue colonial house on Maple Ridge Drive in Knoxville, Tennessee. I've lived in this house for 41 years. My husband, Harold David Caldwell, and I bought it the summer of 1983, 2 months after our wedding. Harold was a structural engineer for the city, and I was a fourth-grade teacher at Whittle Springs Elementary for 31 years before I retired. We were married for 36 beautiful years before pancreatic cancer took Harold from me in October of 2019. He fought it for 14 months, and I was beside him every single day, holding his hand in that hospice bed until his last breath left him at 3:17 in the morning on a cold Tuesday. Harold and I had 2 children. Our daughter, Catherine Rose Caldwell, who everyone calls Katie, is 44 now. She lives in Asheville, North Carolina, with her husband Martin and their 2 daughters, Lily, who is 12, and Emma, who is 9. Katie is a pediatric nurse. She calls me every Sunday without fail, and she has never once forgotten my birthday. Then there's my son, Derek Allen Caldwell, 47. Derek was always the one I worried about more, not because he was troubled, but because he was soft, too trusting, too eager to please. Harold used to sit in his old leather recliner by the window, the one I still can't bring myself to move, and say, "That boy's got a good heart, Maggie, but a good heart without a strong spine is just a target." I wish I'd listened more carefully to those words. On the mantel above my fireplace, there's a photograph in a silver frame. It's from Christmas 2016. Harold is standing in the backyard beside the rose garden he planted when Katie was born, and Derek is next to him, both of them laughing about something I can't remember now. Derek's arm is around his father's shoulder. That photograph used to make me smile. Now it just makes me ache, because the man in that picture, my son, the one laughing with his dying father, became someone I barely recognize. It started, as these things often do, with a woman. Derek married Vanessa Marie Thornton in June of 2018. I remember the wedding clearly because Harold was already sick by then, though we didn't know it yet. He had been losing weight, feeling tired, but he put on his best gray suit and walked into that ceremony with his shoulders straight and his eyes proud. Vanessa seemed lovely at first. She was 39, a marketing coordinator for a mid-sized furniture company in Nashville. She had a wide smile, a firm handshake, and a way of looking right at you when she spoke that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. I liked her. I genuinely liked her. The first 2 years of their marriage overlapped with Harold's illness and death, so things were chaotic, emotional. Vanessa was polite during the funeral. She brought a casserole. She held my hand during the service. But looking back now, I realized she was already watching, already calculating. Because less than 3 months after Harold died, on January 8th, 2020, Derek called me for the first time to ask for money. "Mom, I hate to even bring this up," he said, his voice low like he was ashamed. "But Vanessa and I are in a tight spot. Her car broke down, the transmission went, and we need $4,200 to fix it, or get a replacement. We'll pay you back by March, I swear. I didn't hesitate. What else would a mother do? Harold had left me comfortable. His pension, our savings, the life insurance, the house paid off. I wasn't wealthy, but I was secure. I transferred $4,200 the next morning. March came and went. No repayment. I didn't mention it. I told myself they were still getting on their feet. Then came the second request on April 14th, 2020. This time it was $6,500. Vanessa's student loans were apparently in collections, and they needed to settle before it affected Derek's credit. I sent the money. No questions asked. By the end of 2020, I had sent Derek a total of $14,700. Not once did he pay back a single dollar. Not once did I ask him to. In February of 2021, Derek called again. This time, the request was bigger. He and Vanessa wanted to put a down payment on a house in Brentwood, a suburb south of Nashville, where the homes start at $400,000. They needed $22,000 for the down payment and closing costs. Derek said they'd been pre-approved for a mortgage, but they were short on the upfront cash. He promised, swore on his father's memory that they would repay me within 18 months once their income stabilized. I remember standing in my kitchen, holding the phone, looking out the window at Harold's rose garden. The roses were dormant, just bare thorny canes sticking up from the frozen ground. Something in me hesitated for the first time. $22,000 was a significant amount. But then Derek said something that dissolved my resistance like sugar in hot water. "Dad would have helped us, Mom. You know he would have." And he was right. Harold would have helped. So I called my bank the next morning and arranged a wire transfer of $22,000 to Derek's account. That was the beginning of the real bleeding. Over the next 2 years, from 2021 through early 2023, the requests kept coming. Each one had a story. Each one had urgency. Each one came with a promise that evaporated like morning dew. On June 3rd, 2021, it was $3,800 for an emergency root canal that Vanessa needed. On September 19th, 2021, it was $7,500 because Derek said he was starting a side business selling custom furniture online and needed equipment. I never saw a single piece of furniture or heard about the business again. On December 2nd, 2021, it was $5,000 for Christmas because, and I quote his text message exactly, "We want to make it special for Vanessa's parents. They've had a hard year and they deserve a good holiday." I sent $5,000 so my son could give Vanessa's parents a good Christmas. I spent that Christmas alone, eating soup and watching old movies in Harold's recliner. On March 27th, 2022, Derek asked for $11,000. Vanessa's mother, Linda Thornton, apparently needed surgery and their insurance wouldn't cover all of it. I sent it. On July 15th, 2022, it was $8,200 for a vacation to Cancun that Derek said was necessary for their mental health because they'd been under so much stress. I found out about the vacation from a Facebook post Vanessa made, all smiles on a white sand beach, holding a cocktail with a little umbrella in it. I was sitting at my kitchen table eating a peanut butter sandwich when I saw that photo. I had canceled my own dental appointment that month because I was worried about my dwindling savings. On October 10th, 2022, another $9,000. This time it was for Vanessa's younger brother, Troy Thornton, who supposedly needed bail money after a DUI arrest. On January 22nd, 2023, $6,800 more for property taxes on the Brentwood house that they said they couldn't cover because of unexpected medical bills. I kept a small notebook in my nightstand drawer. Harold always told me to write everything down. "Paper doesn't forget, Maggie," he used to say. So I wrote down every amount, every date, every reason Derek gave me. One evening, in February 2023, I sat on the edge of my bed, opened that notebook, and added up every dollar I had sent my son since Harold died. The total was $118,500. $118,500. Gone. Sent with love. Received with greed and never returned. Not a penny. I stared at that number until the ink blurred. Then I closed the notebook, put it back in the drawer, and went to make myself a cup of tea. My hands were shaking so badly that I spilled hot water on the counter. I cleaned it up. I drank my tea. I went to bed, but I didn't sleep. I lay in the dark, listening to the house settle around me, and I wondered when my son had stopped seeing me as his mother and started seeing me as a bank account. But I still didn't confront him, because despite everything, despite the money, the broken promises, the silence between holidays, I kept telling myself it would get better. He was my son, my firstborn, the baby I held in my arms at Mercy General Hospital on a rainy Wednesday in April of 1977, 6 pounds and 11 ounces, with Harold's chin and my mother's blue eyes. You don't stop loving that. You can't. But love, I was about to learn, doesn't mean you have to keep bleeding. The moment of Quiberay, the break, the fracture that could not be undone, came on November 28th, 2023. It was a Tuesday. I remember because I had just come home from my weekly volunteering shift at the Knoxville Food Bank, and I was tired but feeling good. The holiday season was approaching, and I'd been planning something extraordinary for Derek, something that I believed would change his life and finally bring him back to me. Harold and I had owned a vacation property on Norris Lake, about 45 minutes north of Knoxville. A beautiful 3-bedroom cabin with a wraparound porch and a stone fireplace. Harold and I had spent countless weekends there. We'd paid it off in 2010. The property was now worth approximately $340,000 based on a recent appraisal. I had decided to deed it over to Derek as a Christmas gift. I'd already spoken with my attorney about the paperwork. I wanted to give my son something meaningful, something that would last, something that Harold had loved. I imagined Derek's face when he opened the envelope and found the deed inside. I imagined him bringing his own children there someday. I imagined him finally saying, "Thank you, Mom." I walked into my kitchen, set down my purse, and picked up my phone to check my messages. There was a text from Derek. It had been sent at 2:47 p.m. "Mom, about Christmas. Vanessa and I talked about it, and we decided to spend it with her family this year. Her parents are hosting a big dinner, and it's important to Vanessa. So don't come. Don't plan anything. Vanessa's family is our real family now. I know you'll understand." I read it 3 times. Don't come. Vanessa's family is our real family now. I set the phone down on the counter very carefully, as if it were made of glass. I pulled out a kitchen chair and sat down. The clock on the wall ticked. Harold's roses were visible through the window, the late autumn canes bare and skeletal against the gray sky. Something cold settled in my chest. Not sadness. Not yet. Something sharper, clearer. It was the feeling of a door closing. Not a door I closed. A door my son slammed in my face. I sat in that chair for 45 minutes without moving. Then I picked up the phone and called my attorney, Barbara Hendricks, at Hendricks and Pratt Law Offices on Cumberland Avenue. Barbara had been Harold's attorney for 20 years and mine since he passed. "Barbara," I said, and my voice was calm, so calm it surprised me. "I need you to stop the property transfer to Derek, immediately, and I need to schedule a meeting with you this week. There are some things I need to understand about my legal options." "Margaret, are you all right?" Barbara asked. "No," I said, "but I'm going to be." The meeting with Barbara Hendricks took place on Friday, December 1st, 2023, at 10 a.m. Barbara was 61, a tall woman with silver-streaked auburn hair and reading glasses that she wore on a chain around her neck. She had a reputation in Knoxville as someone you did not want on the other side of a courtroom. She was meticulous, relentless, and she had a memory like a steel trap. I brought my notebook. I spread every receipt, every bank statement, every screenshot of every text message across her conference table. I had printed out 63 pages of documentation. Barbara put on her reading glasses and went through every single page without saying a word. It took her 40 minutes. When she finished, she looked up at me over the rims of her glasses and said, "Margaret, this is systematic financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. Under Tennessee law, specifically Tennessee Code, annotated 71-6-117, this constitutes elder financial abuse. The repeated pattern of requests, the false pretenses, the failure to repay, the manipulation using your deceased husband's memory. This is textbook." "I'm not vulnerable," I said. "I'm just a mother who trusted her son." "In the eyes of the law," Barbara said gently, "those are often the same thing." Barbara referred me to a forensic accountant named David Chen, who worked out of an office on Gay Street downtown. David was 45, quiet, precise, and wore wire-rimmed glasses that made him look like a professor. Over the next 2 weeks, David traced every dollar I had sent to Derek. What he found made my blood run cold. Of the $118,500 I had sent, only $22,000 had actually gone toward the house down payment. The rest, $96,500, had been spent on things Derek and Vanessa never told me about. $14,000 went to a luxury furniture package for their Brentwood house. $11,500 went to a Caribbean cruise in August 2022 that I never knew about. $8,700 went to designer clothing purchases on Vanessa's credit card, which they paid off using my money. $18,000 went directly to Vanessa's parents, Frank and Linda Thornton, who used it to renovate their own kitchen and bathroom. The story about Linda needing surgery was a complete fabrication. $7,300 went to Troy Thornton, Vanessa's brother, not for bail money, but for a down payment on a sports car, a used Corvette that I later found photographed on his Instagram page. The remaining funds went to dining, entertainment, and various personal expenditures that had nothing to do with emergencies. David Chen compiled everything into a 68-page report with charts, bank records, and cross-reference transactions. When he handed it to me, he said, "Mrs. Caldwell, I've done forensic accounting for divorce cases and fraud cases for 15 years. This is one of the clearest patterns of financial manipulation I've ever documented. I also hired a private investigator, a woman named Detective Rosa Martinez, who operated independently out of a small office in West Knoxville. Rosa was 53, compact, sharp-eyed, and had spent 20 years with the Knox County Sheriff's Department before going private. I asked her to look into the Thornton family's finances and any connections to the money I'd sent. What Rosa found was staggering. Frank and Linda Thornton were not struggling at all. Frank Thornton owned a successful landscaping business in Nashville with annual revenues exceeding $600,000. Linda Thornton had retired from a pharmaceutical company with a full pension. Their home in Franklin, Tennessee, was valued at $720,000 and was fully paid off. The story about them having a hard year was nonsense. They were doing better than I was. They had used my money to upgrade their already comfortable home while I was skipping dental appointments and eating peanut butter sandwiches for dinner. Vanessa herself was earning $78,000 a year at her marketing job. Derek was making $85,000 as an operations manager at a logistics company. Their combined household income was $163,000 annually. They didn't need my money. They had never needed my money. They simply wanted it, and I was too blinded by love to see what was happening. I called Katie on a Sunday evening, December 10th, 2023, and told her everything. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then my daughter said very quietly, "Mom, I've been biting my tongue about Derek and Vanessa for 3 years. I didn't want to cause a rift, but I saw this coming. Martin and I both did. We just didn't know how bad it was. It's bad, sweetheart, I said. Then we fight, Katie said, and I'm standing right beside you. I did not call Derek to confront him. Not yet. Barbara advised me to wait until all the legal documentation was in order. But Derek, sensing perhaps that the money pipeline was drying up, called me on December 18th, 2023. I let it go to voicemail. His message said, "Hey, Mom. So listen, I know what I said about Christmas came out wrong. Vanessa and I aren't trying to shut you out or anything. But her family's got this whole tradition, and it's a big deal to her. I'm sure you get it. Anyway, I was calling because Vanessa's car is making a weird noise, and the mechanic says it needs a new catalytic converter. It's going to be about $2,800. Any chance you could help us out? Call me back. Love you. Love you." After telling me not to come for Christmas, after calling his wife's family his real family, after taking $118,500 from me and spending it on cruises and Corvettes, love you, I saved the voicemail. Barbara said it was useful evidence of the ongoing pattern. Christmas 2023 came and went. I spent it with Katie, Martin, Lily, and Emma in Asheville. We made Harold's famous pot roast recipe. Lily played piano carols she'd learned at school. Emma made me a card with glitter glue that said, "Best Grandma in the Galaxy." I put it on my refrigerator when I got home. It's still there. Derek did not call me on Christmas Day. He did not text. Nothing. On January 4th, 2024, Barbara Hendricks filed a civil lawsuit in Knox County Circuit Court on my behalf. The case was Margaret Ellen Caldwell versus Derek Allen Caldwell and Vanessa Marie Caldwell, case number 2024-CV-00187. The lawsuit alleged elder financial exploitation, fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, unjust enrichment, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. We were seeking full restitution of $118,500, plus punitive damages, plus attorney's fees and costs. Derek found out about the lawsuit on January 11th when he was served at his workplace. He called me 17 times that day. I did not answer. He left 4 voicemails, each one escalating in tone. The first, "Mom, what is this? I just got served with papers at my job. My coworkers saw. What are you doing? Call me." The second, an hour later, "This is insane, Mom. You're suing me? Your own son? Over money you gave us? You gave us that money. It wasn't a loan. This is crazy." The third, 2 hours after that, "Vanessa is furious. Her parents are furious. You're embarrassing our whole family. Is this what Dad would have wanted? Think about that." The fourth, at 9:47 p.m., "If you don't drop this lawsuit, I will never speak to you again. You'll never see your grandchildren if Vanessa and I have any. Is that what you want? You're choosing money over your own son." I saved every voicemail. Barbara added them to the evidence file. 3 days later, on January 14th, Vanessa herself sent me a text message. It read, "Margaret, I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but you should know that Derek is devastated. You're tearing this family apart over money. We never forced you to give us anything. You offered. We're talking to a lawyer about having you evaluated for competency. Someone who sues their own child clearly isn't thinking straight." I forwarded the message to Barbara. Barbara smiled when she read it. "A competency threat," she said. "Classic. They always go there when they're scared. Don't worry, Margaret. You're the most competent person in this entire situation." The next few weeks were turbulent. Vanessa began calling extended family members, Harold's surviving brother Gordon, my cousin Phyllis in Memphis, even a few of my neighbors, telling them that I had lost my mind and was being manipulated by a greedy attorney. She painted a picture of a confused elderly woman being taken advantage of by lawyers and turning against her own flesh and blood. But here's the thing about small communities. People talk, and people in Knoxville knew me. They knew I had taught their children and grandchildren. They knew I volunteered at the food bank every week. They knew I had cared for Harold through his illness without complaint. And they knew the character of a woman who had lived in the same house on Maple Ridge Drive for 41 years. My neighbor, Patricia Downey, who was 70 and had lived next door for 28 years, called me one evening after Vanessa had contacted her. "Maggie," Patricia said, "that daughter-in-law of yours just called me and spent 20 minutes telling me you've gone senile. I told her I had coffee with you yesterday and you beat me at Scrabble by 60 points, so she could take her story and stuff it." Gordon Caldwell, Harold's brother, called me from his home in Chattanooga. "Maggie, I got a very interesting phone call from Vanessa today. She told me you're not well. I told her I've known you for 45 years and you're sharper than a box of tacks. I also told her that Harold would be ashamed of what Derek is doing, and she hung up on me." Even Derek's old high school friend, a man named Marcus Webb, who now ran an auto repair shop in Knoxville, reached out to me. "Mrs. Caldwell, I don't know all the details, but Derek called me last week trying to get me to talk to you. Something about a lawsuit. I just want you to know, whatever's going on, I always thought you were the best mom on the block. If Derek's messed up, that's on him. I wasn't alone anymore. I'd never really been alone. I had just forgotten that while I was busy giving everything I had to a son who didn't deserve it." On February 15th, 2024, Derek and Vanessa attempted to show up at my house, unannounced. It was a Thursday evening, about 6:30 p.m. I was in the kitchen making dinner when I heard a car pull into my driveway and 2 doors slam, then pounding on my front door. "Mom, open the door. We need to talk about this face to face." Derek's voice was loud, aggressive, nothing like the boy who used to help Harold plant roses on Saturday mornings. I did not open the door. I called the Knox County Sheriff's Department non-emergency line. Deputy James Whitaker arrived within 12 minutes. He spoke to Derek and Vanessa in the driveway while I watched from the window. "Ma'am, sir, Mrs. Caldwell has asked that you leave the property," Deputy Whitaker said. "There's an active civil case between you, and she's within her rights to refuse contact. I'm going to ask you to leave peacefully." Derek stared at the front of the house. I could see his face under the porch light. He looked angry and hurt and confused all at the same time. Vanessa was standing behind him with her arms crossed, her jaw set. She looked purely angry, no confusion, no hurt, just rage that her access to my money was being challenged. They left. I watched their taillights disappear down Maple Ridge Drive. Then I sat down in Harold's recliner and held the armrests where his hands used to rest, and I cried. Not because I was scared, not because I regretted what I was doing. I cried because I missed my son, the real one, the one who used to exist before Vanessa Thornton taught him that his mother's love was a resource to be extracted. The trial took place on April 22nd, 2024, in Knox County Circuit Court, Courtroom 3B. The presiding judge was the Honorable Judge Patricia Morrison, a woman in her mid-60s with silver hair, a calm voice, and a reputation for thoroughness that made lawyers on both sides prepare meticulously or suffer the consequences. Barbara Hendricks was masterful. She wore a dark navy suit, and she walked the courtroom like she owned it, not with arrogance, but with the quiet confidence of someone who had prepared exhaustively and knew she was right. Derek and Vanessa had hired an attorney named Craig Lester from a firm in Nashville. Lester was in his late 40s, slick, and tried to frame the entire case as a misunderstanding between a generous mother and a grateful son. He argued that every dollar I sent was a gift, freely given, with no expectation of repayment. Barbara destroyed that argument methodically. She introduced the text messages where Derek explicitly promised repayment, including one from February 2021 that read, "I'll pay you back every cent, Mom. 18 months max, I promise, on Dad's grave. She introduced the voicemails. She introduced David Chen's forensic accounting report showing that the money was spent on luxury items, not emergencies. She introduced Rosa Martinez's investigative findings, proving that the Thornton family was financially comfortable and that multiple stories Derek told me were fabricated. She called me to the stand first. I wore a gray dress that Harold had always liked and the small pearl earrings he gave me for our 25th anniversary. Mrs. Caldwell, Barbara said, when your son asked you for money, did he tell you it was a gift, or did he promise to repay you? He promised to repay me, I said. Every single time. He said it was temporary. He said they were in a tight spot. He said he'd pay me back. And did he ever repay any portion of the $118,500 you sent him? Not $1. Did you ever learn that many of the reasons he gave you for needing money were fabricated? I did. The surgery that never happened. The bail money that bought a sports car. The business that never existed. I learned all of it. Barbara then introduced the Facebook and Instagram posts projected on a screen in the courtroom, showing Vanessa's beach vacation photos, Troy's Corvette, the Thorntons' renovated kitchen, all funded by my money, all posted during periods when Derek was telling me they were struggling. The courtroom was silent. When David Chen took the stand, he walked the judge through every transaction, every cross-reference, every lie mapped against the financial reality. His testimony took nearly 2 hours. Craig Lester tried to object multiple times, but Judge Morrison overruled him each time, her face increasingly stern. Then Vanessa took the stand in their defense, and that was where their case truly fell apart. Craig Lester had coached her to be sympathetic, to talk about how generous I had been, and how they never intended any harm. But Barbara's cross-examination was surgical. Mrs. Caldwell, Barbara said, addressing Vanessa by her married name, on June 3, 2021, your husband told his mother that you needed $3,800 for an emergency root canal. Did you have a root canal in June 2021? Vanessa hesitated. I had some dental work. Your dental records, which we subpoenaed, show no root canal procedure in 2021. In fact, your dental records show a routine cleaning in July 2021 and nothing else. Where did the $3,800 go? Vanessa looked at Craig Lester. He was staring at his legal pad. I don't recall exactly. Let me help your memory, Barbara said, and she pulled up a credit card statement. On June 7th, 2021, 4 days after the money was transferred, there was a $3,650 charge on your Visa card at Restoration Hardware in Nashville. Do you recall that purchase? Vanessa's face went pale. That might have been for furniture. Furniture, Barbara repeated, letting the word hang in the air. Not a root canal. Barbara continued this pattern for 45 minutes, dismantling lie after lie with documentary evidence. By the end, Vanessa was barely able to speak above a whisper. Derek sat at the defendant's table with his head in his hands. Judge Morrison called a recess at 3:15 p.m. and reconvened at 4 p.m. When she returned, she spent 20 minutes delivering her ruling. I will never forget her words. This court finds that the defendants, Derek Allen Caldwell and Vanessa Marie Caldwell, engaged in a systematic pattern of financial exploitation of the plaintiff, Margaret Ellen Caldwell. The evidence overwhelmingly demonstrates that the defendants obtained funds from the plaintiff through false pretenses, fabricated emergencies, and promises of repayment that they never intended to honor. The plaintiff, a widow living on a fixed income, trusted her son and was repaid with deception and greed. Judge Morrison paused and looked directly at Derek. Mr. Caldwell, your mother spent 31 years teaching children. She spent 36 years being a devoted wife. She nursed your father through cancer, and you repaid her by systematically draining her savings while telling her your wife's family was your real family. This court takes a particularly dim view of that. She ordered full restitution of $118,500 plus $47,400 in punitive damages, plus $18,200 in attorney's fees and investigative costs, for a total judgment of $184,100. She also referred the case to the Knox County District Attorney's Office for potential criminal charges of elder financial exploitation. When the gavel came down, I did not cheer. I did not smile. I sat very still in my chair and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not triumph, not vindication. Peace. The quiet peace of knowing that I had stood up for myself, that Harold's money had been accounted for, and that the truth had finally been spoken aloud in a room where it could not be denied. Derek tried to approach me in the hallway outside the courtroom. His eyes were red. Vanessa was nowhere to be seen, having left through a side exit. "Mom, please," he said. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. We can work this out. You don't need to do this. I'm your son." I looked at him for a long moment. I saw the boy who used to help his father in the rose garden. I saw the man who told me his wife's family was his real family. I saw both of them at once, and I felt the full weight of what had been lost. "You are my son," I said, "and I will always love you. But love does not mean I will let you destroy me. You will pay back every dollar the court has ordered, Derek. And until you do, until you truly understand what you did, I have nothing more to say to you." I turned and walked away. Barbara was waiting for me by the elevator. She put her hand on my shoulder and said, "You did beautifully, Margaret." The consequences for Derek and Vanessa came swiftly and thoroughly. The judgment of $184,100 was more than they could absorb. They were forced to sell the Brentwood house, the very house my $22,000 down payment had secured. After paying off their mortgage and the judgment, they were left with almost nothing from the sale. They moved into a rental apartment in Antioch, a far cry from the Brentwood lifestyle Vanessa had been curating on social media. Vanessa's reaction to the financial pressure was predictable. Within 3 months of the judgment, she filed for divorce. Derek told Katie, during one of the rare occasions he reached out to his sister, that Vanessa had said, and I quote, "I didn't sign up for this. Your family has done nothing but cause problems." The irony of Vanessa blaming our family after what she had orchestrated was not lost on anyone. The divorce was finalized in September 2024. Vanessa moved back in with her parents in Franklin. But even the Thornton family's comfortable world was disrupted. The Knox County District Attorney, after reviewing the referral from Judge Morrison, opened a criminal investigation into the financial exploitation. In November 2024, Derek was charged with 1 count of financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, a Class E felony in Tennessee. Vanessa was named as a co-conspirator, but ultimately accepted a plea deal that included 2 years of probation, 200 hours of community service, and a formal restitution order. Derek's case went to criminal court in January 2025. His attorney negotiated a plea agreement that resulted in 3 years of supervised probation, mandatory financial counseling, and a restitution schedule that would take him years to fulfill. He avoided prison time, but the felony charge went on his record. His employer, the logistics company where he'd worked for 8 years, terminated him after the conviction became public. He found work eventually, managing a warehouse in Murfreesboro at roughly half his previous salary. The Thornton family's involvement did not escape scrutiny either. While Frank and Linda Thornton were not charged criminally, David Chen's report and Rosa Martinez's investigation revealed that they had knowingly received funds that were obtained through fraud. Barbara Hendrick sent them a formal demand letter for the return of $18,000 they had received, and rather than face a separate lawsuit and the public exposure it would bring, they paid it back in full within 60 days. Troy Thornton, Vanessa's brother, was less cooperative. He refused to return the $7,300 that had been used toward his Corvette. Barbara filed a separate small claims action, and a judge ordered him to pay restitution plus court costs, totaling $8,100. He sold the Corvette to cover it. I saw Derek one more time, unexpectedly, In March 2025, I was at the Kroger on Broadway buying groceries. I came around the end of the cereal aisle, and there he was, standing by the bread section, looking thinner than I remembered, wearing a plain jacket, holding a basket with just a few items in it. He looked tired, older than 47. Our eyes met. He opened his mouth to say something. I waited, but nothing came out. He just stood there, and for a moment, he looked exactly like the little boy who used to come into my bedroom during thunderstorms, scared and needing comfort. I nodded at him, just a small nod. Then I walked past him toward the checkout line. I felt nothing, not triumph, not pity, just quiet certainty that justice had been served, and a deep, aching sadness for the son I used to have. With the money recovered and the judgment being paid in installments, I began to rebuild, not just financially, but emotionally, spiritually, in every way that mattered. The first thing I did was properly restore Harold's rose garden. I hired a landscaper recommended by Patricia Downey, a young man named Elijah Torres, who had a gift with plants. Elijah spent 2 weekends carefully pruning, feeding, and replanting. By June 2024, the roses were blooming more beautifully than they had in years. Deep reds, soft pinks, creamy whites. I sat on the back porch one evening with a glass of iced tea and watched the sun set behind Harold's roses, and I whispered, "They're beautiful, Harold. I wish you could see them." I put $40,000 into a 529 education savings plan, split equally between Lily and Emma, Katie's daughters. When I told Katie, she cried on the phone for 5 minutes straight. "Mom, you don't have to do that," she said. "I want to," I said. "Your father would have wanted to. They're our girls, Katie. Let's make sure they have every opportunity." I donated $10,000 to the Knoxville Food Bank, where I had been volunteering for 6 years. The director, a wonderful woman named Constance Harper, used the money to expand their refrigerated storage capacity, which allowed